What if everything you believe about your mind is incomplete? What if the voice inside your head is not located where you think it is? And what if the greatest discovery about consciousness isn't comforting, but unsettling? Close your eyes for a moment. Notice the darkness behind your eyelids. Notice the thoughts forming, the silent narration, the memories waiting in the background, the awareness observing it all. Now ask yourself a simple question. Where is this happening? Most people answer instantly, in my brain. It sounds obvious, scientific, final. But the more physics and neuroscience advanced in the 20th century, the stranger that answer became. And among the physicists who helped reshape our understanding of reality was a man who constantly challenged simple explanations, Richard Feynman. Feynman did not claim to solve consciousness, but he did something far more powerful. He forced us to confront how little we truly understand about the relationship between matter and experience. Let's begin with what we think we know. Your brain weighs about 1.4 kilograms. It contains roughly 86 billion neurons. Each neuron connects to thousands of others, forming trillions of synaptic connections. Electrical impulses travel across this network. Chemicals are released. Signals propagate. Patterns emerge. Somehow, experience appears. But here is the first unsettling truth. Neuroscience can map activity. It can detect which regions activate when you see red, feel pain, remember childhood, or solve a math problem. Yet nowhere inside the brain do scientists find a redness detector. Nowhere is there a tiny screen displaying your thoughts. There is no central theater, no miniature observer sitting inside your skull watching the show. So where is the mind? When you look at a tree, photons reflect off its surface, enter your eyes, strike the retina, and trigger the electrical signals. Those signals travel through the optic nerve into the visual cortex. But inside the skull, there are no trees, only electrochemical pulses. The image you experience is not physically present anywhere in the brain as a picture. It is a pattern of activity. Now here is where things become disturbing. If the image is only a pattern, and the sound of your inner voice is also a pattern, and your sense of self is another pattern, then what exactly is experiencing the pattern? Physics describes particles and fields. Biology describes cells and networks. But neither description explains why there is something it feels like to be you. Feynman once emphasized a critical principle in science. If we do not understand how something works at the fundamental level, we must admit it honestly. And when it comes to consciousness, honesty demands humility. The brain obeys the laws of physics. Neurons follow chemistry. Ion channels open and close. Molecules diffuse. There is nothing in the equations of electromagnetism or quantum mechanics that predicts subjective experience. The laws describe behavior. They do not describe awareness. Here is the deeper puzzle. If your mind exists entirely inside your brain, then it is confined to about 1.4 kilograms of biological matter. Yet your experience does not feel confined. When you look at the night sky, it feels vast, expansive, limitless. Your awareness seems to extend outward, filling the space you perceive. But physically, nothing leaves your skull. This creates a paradox. The brain constructs a model of the world. That model includes space, distance, sound, color, time. But the model itself exists only as neuroactivity. So in a sense, the universe you experience is a simulation generated by your nervous system. Not a digital simulation, a biological one. You never experience raw reality directly. You experience your brain's interpretation of electrical signals. And now we must ask something even more uncomfortable. If your mind is a process generated by neural patterns, Then what happens if those patterns are interrupted? Consider anesthesia. When you are placed under general anesthesia, neural communication becomes disrupted. Activity patterns break down. Conscious awareness vanishes. Where did your mind go? Did it travel somewhere? Did it pause? Or did it simply cease to exist during that time? When you wake up, continuity feels restored. But physically, there was a complete interruption in conscious processing. This suggests something profound. Consciousness is not a permanent object. It is an active process, like a flame. If you extinguish a flame, nothing travels elsewhere. The process simply stops. When you relight it, it is a new flame sustained by fuel and oxygen. Is your mind similar? If so, then the self may not be a fixed entity residing in the brain. It may be a dynamic pattern continuously recreated moment by moment. This realization unsettles many people, because we instinctively believe there is a stable observer inside us. But modern physics eliminated the idea of solid, unchanging matter. Atoms are mostly empty space. Particles are excitations of fields. Even the concept of a particle becomes blurry at quantum scales. Reality at the fundamental level is not made of tiny billiard balls. It is made of fluctuating probabilities and interacting fields. And your brain is built from those same fluctuating foundations. So the place where your mind exists might not be a location in the traditional sense. It might be a pattern emerging from interactions within physical fields. Now imagine zooming in further. Neurons rely on ion flows across membranes. These ion flows depend on quantum-level interactions between charged particles. Some researchers have speculated whether quantum processes play a role in consciousness. Most neuroscientists remain skeptical, arguing that the brain is too warm and noisy for delicate quantum coherence to survive. But even if consciousness is entirely classical, purely emergent from large-scale neural networks, the mystery remains. How does matter become experience? Physics explains how matter behaves. It does not explain why certain arrangements of matter produce an inner world. And here is the disturbing possibility. What if the mind does not exist inside the brain in the way we imagine? What if the brain is more like a receiver or an interface, interacting with deeper layers of physical reality? This idea remains speculative. There is no solid evidence for consciousness existing independently of the brain. But the fact that we cannot fully explain subjective awareness leaves the door slightly open. Feynman warned against inventing comforting stories without evidence, so we must remain grounded. Every reliable experiment so far shows that altering the brain alters the mind. Damage specific regions and personality changes. Stimulate certain circuits and memories emerge. Introduce chemicals and perception shifts. This strongly suggests that the brain generates the mind. Yet generation does not equal explanation. We can describe the mechanisms. We cannot yet explain the emergence. So where does your mind actually exist? At this point, the honest answer is unsettlingly incomplete. It exists as a dynamic informational process occurring within neural matter. But that description still doesn't capture the lived reality of experience. And in part 2, we'll go deeper, because the next question is even more disturbing. If the mind is only a pattern, could it exist somewhere else? And if it could be copied, would it still be you?
If your mind is only a pattern, then patterns can, in principle, be reproduced, and that possibility changes everything. In part 1, we reached an unsettling conclusion. The mind does not appear to be a solid object hidden somewhere inside the brain. It behaves more like a dynamic process, a constantly updating pattern of electrical and chemical activity. But if consciousness is a pattern, then a terrifying question follows. Could that pattern be copied? Imagine a future machine capable of scanning your brain down to every neuron, every synapse, every electrical state at a specific moment. It records the entire informational structure, the precise configuration that corresponds to your memories, your personality, your current thoughts. Then, the machine reconstructs that exact configuration in another biological brain, or even inside a computer simulation. The copy opens its eyes. It remembers your childhood. It remembers reading this sentence. It insists it is you. But are you still there? Or did something fundamental fail to transfer? This thought experiment forces us to confront something physics rarely addresses directly: continuity. From a physical standpoint, identity is not a mystical substance. It is an arrangement of matter and energy following lawful patterns. If those patterns are reproduced perfectly, physics would say the systems are indistinguishable. There is no extra soul particle described in the standard model of physics, no hidden variable labeled self. The equations treat both arrangements as equally real, and that is precisely what makes the situation disturbing. Because from your perspective, from the stream of awareness you are experiencing right now, identity feels continuous. It feels unbroken. You do not wake up each morning believing you are a replacement of yesterday's version. Yet biologically, your body is constantly changing. Cells die and are replaced. Molecules are exchanged. Atoms flow in and out through breathing, eating, metabolism. Over years, most of the atoms in your body are replaced. So what remains constant? Not the material, the pattern, the organizational structure, the informational continuity. This leads to a profound realization. Perhaps your mind does not exist in any single atom or neuron. It exists in the relationships between them. In physics, this is not unusual. A wave is not a substance, it is a pattern of motion in a medium. A hurricane is not a solid object, it is a structured flow of air and energy. You are more like a hurricane of neural activity than a statue of fixed matter. But here's the unsettling twist. A hurricane can dissipate, and if it dissipates completely, the pattern is gone. If your brain activity stops entirely, not briefly interrupted like sleep, but permanently, the pattern collapses. There is no evidence in physics that the pattern migrates elsewhere. Energy is conserved, matter is conserved, but patterns are not guaranteed preservation. They require active maintenance. Now consider digital information. You can copy a file from one computer to another. The original remains. The copy functions identically. If consciousness is informational, does that mean it can be copied in the same way? Many neuroscientists argue that in principle, if you could map the brain with sufficient resolution and recreate its structure, the resulting system would produce the same conscious experience. But here lies the philosophical fracture. Even if the copy behaves identically, would your current stream of awareness jump to that copy? Physics provides no mechanism for such a jump. Causality flows through space-time continuously. There is no equation that allows a conscious perspective to detach from one physical process and attach to another. This suggests something unsettling. Even a perfect duplicate would not preserve you. It would create another conscious being that believes it is you. But your current awareness would not transfer. It would end when the original process ends. Now let's return to something deeper, something Feynman constantly emphasized. Nature is not obligated to satisfy our intuitions. The human brain evolved for survival, not for understanding ultimate reality. Our intuitions about identity, continuity, and self may be convenient illusions, emergent narratives created by neural systems to maintain coherence. The self might not be a fundamental entity at all. It might be a story the brain tells itself. Consider split brain experiments. In rare medical procedures, the corpus callosum, the bridge connecting the brain's hemispheres, is severed. Afterward, researchers observed something astonishing. The two hemispheres can operate semi-independently. They can hold different information. They can even produce conflicting responses. In some experiments, the left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, would act in opposition to the right hand. Which side contains the real self? The answer appears to be uncomfortable. Both sides generate their own narrative explanations. The sense of a unified I emerges from communication between systems. When that communication is disrupted, unity fragments. This suggests that the self is not a central commander. It is a coordination effect, an emergent property of distributed processes. So where does your mind actually exist? Not in a single neuron, not in a single location, not as a fixed object. It exists as a distributed pattern across billions of interacting cells. It exists as electrical gradients, as chemical exchanges, as synchronized oscillations. And perhaps most disturbingly, it exists only as long as those processes continue. Physics does not promise permanence. Entropy ensures that ordered systems decay without energy input. Your brain consumes about 20% of your body's energy at rest, an enormous metabolic cost. Why? Because maintaining that delicate informational pattern requires constant work against disorder. The mind is expensive, it is fragile, and it is temporary. But here is the final layer of the disturbance. If your experienced universe is constructed inside your brain, then everything you have ever known, every star, every memory, every face, exists for you only as neural activity. The physical universe exists independently, yes, but your access to it is mediated entirely through patterns in your nervous system. You never experience raw atoms. You experience a model built from signals. In that sense, your mind is both confined to the brain and larger than the cosmos you perceive, because the perceived cosmos exists within it. The brain generates a three-dimensional simulation of space. It projects sounds outward. It embeds your body into that simulation. It creates the illusion of being located inside a world, when in fact the world you experience is a reconstruction inside neural tissue. This does not mean reality is fake. It means your experience of reality is constructed, and that construction is where your mind resides, not as a ghost in the machine, but as the machine in motion. Richard Feynman once said that living with uncertainty is essential to science, and perhaps the most honest conclusion we can reach is this: we do not yet fully understand why matter arranged in a certain way becomes aware. We do not know whether consciousness is purely emergent or whether deeper layers of physics remain undiscovered. But every experiment so far points towards one consistent idea. The mind is not separate from the physical world. It is what the physical world does when arranged in a particularly extraordinarily complex way. Your thoughts are not outside the universe. They are part of it. Temporary ripples in fields that have existed since the beginning of time. And when those ripples settle, the pattern ends. Not with drama, not with cosmic fireworks, but with silence. The disturbing discovery is not that your mind floats somewhere mysterious. It is that it is inseparable from the fragile physical processes sustaining it. You are not a thing hidden inside your brain. You are the activity of your brain. A living pattern, a temporary storm of matter and energy, and for a brief span of cosmic time, that storm is aware.